There's a kind of a thing in science that it says when there's a really big insight, it tends to come in an elegant way. Something shines out about it. Its simplicity and beauty, etc. So a really big insight doesn't come with a whole load of cumbersome, tortuous theory. It just shines out. Now, I don't really know if that was always the case. I imagine it's always the case. I know when Richard Feynman came up with his quantum electrodynamic theory, which is said to be elegant, which is elegant, in that it's simple yet startlingly predictive. At the same time, someone else, a contemporary physicist, came to roughly the same point, so I read, via an incredibly unwieldy and complicated and tortuous load of maths that'd wreck your head unless you were very, very good at maths, who came to the same thing. So maybe it is possible to get to these insights via a non-elegant way, but on the whole, startling insights are characterized by their elegance. I think it's safe enough to say that. No one's going to object to that. So the point of me going on about quantum electrodynamics and rambling on like that is to tie this into psychology, that we don't have any elegant insights in psychology. Well, not recently, we don't. When Abraham Maslow talked about deficiency type and being type motivation, I'd count that as pretty elegant. When Freud talked about unconscious motivation, I'd say that's pretty elegant as well, because there's a lot in it and you can say it in a sentence. But these days we've gone the other way. We've got lost in tedious waffle that when you look at it, there's nothing really behind it, apart from it's just a load of tedious waffle, and that's it really. And I can't for the life of me see how anyone could argue otherwise. If they could argue otherwise, they would do, but I don't think they don't. I suppose, trying to be fair, that there have been attempts to have some elegant way of putting everything together, an example of which would be evolutionary psychology. But that doesn't count because it doesn't really work. So even if it is kind of a formula that explains everything, it only does so at the cost of simplifying things and leaving a hell of a lot out, which is to have a theory like that, whilst it might look elegant, it isn't. It's really just collapsing everything into a crude, oversimplified, as I was saying, way of looking at things. Anybody can do that. We all do that all the time. We all oversimplify. That's nothing elegant about oversimplifying stuff. That's not it at all. The thing is to kind of express it succinctly but not oversimplify, which is hard. That doesn't come easily. As Richard Feynman says, it comes after an incredible amount of real arduous effort. It's not something you just throw off or you just dash out, just come out with it like that. And I imagine we don't really know how much effort, unless we happen to have personally gone through it ourselves. We can't imagine how much effort is involved or how much difficulty. But anyway, getting back to the subject of psychology, we've ended up with a morass of what seems to be more like obfuscation than anything else. In other words, a smokescreen that can intimidate you because it's intimidating, and it contains pseudoscience, and it contains elements of science, I suppose you could say, and long words and jargon and bits of statistics and whatever else. but behind it there has to be an elegant principle, otherwise it's nothing. It's just, you've missed out the most important part, really. And I know Feynman has said that himself, and so has Noam Chomsky. This proliferation of pseudoscience that's going on so much these days. And of course, there's no one really around to see it unless you happen to be within the realms of psychology and within the realms of social science. We don't really question because that's what's there, and we take it for granted. I don't think there's very few people that was willing to stand up and say, this is all just rubbish, really. To put it in a rather crude way, it's just crap. But anyway, to stop waffling again, it is possible to put forward a very elegant way of looking at neurosis, or the neurotic struggle. And that is to say that neurosis is the result of our map of reality not matching up with reality itself, which is a phenomenon known as incoherence in physics, I believe. There's incoherence going on. It doesn't mean that our map is incoherent in itself. It could be totally coherent, but it doesn't go with reality. And so no matter how neat and tidy it might be, if it doesn't go with reality, if it doesn't match reality, it's incoherent, and it'll have adverse consequences. It'll have counterproductive consequences. We want to achieve A, but we won't. We'll achieve B, or we want to achieve A and we'll achieve A at some tremendous cost, which makes the whole effort not worthwhile. So when we express it like that, we can see that the whole field of rational endeavour in a number of areas does incur that type of counterproductivity, as Ivan Illich said. He wrote a lot about counterproductivity. It's kind of like we solve one problem and make six, so then we go flat out to solve those 6 problems, and we just end up with a mass of stuff. And he was talking about that in relation to medicine, in relation to education, in relation to lots of things. Infrastructure, traffic. How we organise society, supposedly to benefit ourselves, has become counterproductive for us because it's not helping our mental health. All our ways of helping ourselves are not helping our mental health, which is quite evident. Even though it may not be so evident as why. But coming back to neurosis, so we have a very basic map which we stick to, and our purposeful activity comes out of that map. There's nowhere else for it to come out of. It has to come out of our map. In actual fact, our purposeful activity is our map, extrapolated or extended into the field of life. And that's where the incoherence comes in. In neurosis, it's very, very clear what that incoherence is, or what that counterproductivity is. We want to escape from our pain, but our attempts to escape from the pain create more pain. So our escaping escalates. Escalated escaping is going on, which means escalated pain production, which means escalated escaping, which means. And you can see all that in something as simple as a panic attack. If we were observant enough to observe that vicious circle going on, we would observe it. But of course we aren't, because just try being observant when you're in the middle of a panic attack. It's not easy. If we were able to be observant, we wouldn't be panicking, and so there'd be no panic attack to observe. But anyway, if we can look at a panic attack from the outside, we can see exactly that happening. Another variant of that same neurosis is to say we want to feel better. We want to have more pleasure in life, or well-being, what we see as well-being in life. We want to improve our situation, but that ends up disimproving it. infallibly disimproving it, which ties in with Illich's specific counterproductivity. It just doesn't work, it works backwards. So it can be said that what we do as human beings, and I'm sure it's not just human beings, but we'll just stick with human beings for the time being. What we do as human beings is that we struggle in order to benefit ourselves. It's fair enough to say that. Via various, either apparently straightforward or tortuous routes, that's what we try and do. We can do all sorts of stuff, weird stuff, mundane stuff, in order to try and do that, but it all backfires. So we can summarize all of that by just saying that really in neurosis, our problem is that we're trying to be happy on purpose. Happy on purpose. Do the things that make you happy. Do the happy things. Do the nice things. And this is, of course, fundamental to our whole capitalist, consumerist, and whatever else you call it, way of life. Because the only reason we buy crap, well, apart from the crap we actually need to buy, but the only reason we go overboard and spend our entire life buying more and more crap is because we think it's going to improve our lives, make the quality of our lives better, that we get more satisfaction, more fulfillment, more whatever it is we're looking for. We're looking for the good stuff in life. So society is based on the idea that we can purposefully do that, and that if we work really hard or really cleverly or whatever way we work, maybe just manage to take advantage of other people in some clever way, we'll make lots of money and we can be happier. We can improve our lives. And that is the only principle that's operating in capitalist consumer society. There isn't any other principle. So what we're talking about isn't actually happiness at all, because that kind of stuff makes us miserable. That's not a contentious statement. Everyone knows that. It doesn't stop us running around the wheel, running around the hamster wheel, but we know it anyway. We really know it, but we're caught up in the collective momentum of it all, because the collective momentum of it all is terrific. What else is there to do but join the rat race? There's a kind of mass hypnosis going on, really. So no matter how clearly we may be able to see things, we're still affected by that mass hypnosis. So that's the social neurosis. And from the point of view of the system that is perpetuating itself, that system really doesn't care if we get to be happy or fulfilled or realized in any way, like our potential being realized, like Maslow says in his thing about the pyramid. Society doesn't care, obviously, and this is a thing that's been said 1,000 times. Society doesn't care because it wants us needy and greedy. Of course, it needs us. It doesn't need us fulfilled, realized. Of course, it doesn't. It doesn't need happy human beings. As Robert Anton Wilson has said, the last thing society wants is happy and balanced human beings. That's no good for society at all. There would be no society in that case. There would be no capitalist and consumerist society in that case. Obviously there wouldn't. So there's a contradiction, or there's a counterproductivity going on, but it doesn't matter to society. It actually works. So for society, not for us individuals, but for society it works. So this vicious circle of them, when we try to fill the hole, the hungrier we get. So filling the hole as an activity is counterproductive. So from a personal point of view, that's bad news. From society's point of view, it's great news. It really is the best news going. It's fantastic news. That's it. That's a godsend. That's the spring that keeps. It's eternal. It's like a perpetual motion machine. That little mechanism there will keep everything going forever. It'll drive everything forever. There'll be human casualties. Society will do. The system will do well. So that's the basic neurosis. And it is a neurosis, as I keep on saying, but I'm just saying it because it's such an amazing thing. It's a neurosis that is encouraged. It's been set up by society, it's encouraged by society, it's validated by society, which is to say society not as some bad thing that we have to, it's us, it's our way of thinking. Society is our way of thinking. So our way of thinking encourages neurosis in us, which is understandable, rather than seeing it as some sort of baddie out there that we need to get up in arms against, because that's bullshit. So all of that may not sound particularly incisive or elegant, but the point is this, that we're operating on a map, and the system, which is our thoughts basically, and it's also the generic mind, and it's also society, gives us a map, and we operate on the basis of this map. And the map is very, very simple. It involves two things, the self and other, self and other. So they're not really two things, because as Alan Watts says, self needs other just as other needs self. But in terms of the map, they're seen as two things. They're presented as two things. And not just two things, they are presented as being opposite things, as different as you can possibly be. Self, me, and other, they're as different as anything could possibly be within the terms of the map that we're running on. In real terms, they're not different, because they're both the map, and the map is an artificial construct, and the map does not correlate to reality. So self is the map, other is the map. Where I am now is the map, where I want to go to the destination is also the map, obviously. It's all just the map. The map is all just the map. There's no one bit of the map which is very, very, very different from any other bit of the map. The map is all just the map. Sameness. It's the same, the same, the same. Wherever you go on the map, it is the same, because it's all just the map, and the map is just the map. Or the description is just the description. There's no one bit of our descriptions of reality that is wildly different from any of the others, because it's all the same cloth. It's all cut out of the same cloth. And so even though within our description of reality, there can be things which you can say, whoa, this is really, really different. This thing is really, really different from that thing. It's not true at all. It's all the same thing. And another example of this would be to talk about winning and losing. Everyone likes to be successful. No one wants to fail. Winning is very, very great. That's what our map says. But winning and losing are both the same. They're both part of our map, which guides how we behave in the world. And another way of putting that, which is simpler, is just to say that winning and losing are just a game. And the thing about the game is it's the same, the same, the same. The game is always the same. Same old game, always the same. And because of that, it's as dull as ditch water. There's nothing in it. It's just two things which appear to be very, very different, winning and losing, but which are just the game. And so if we really, really strongly believe that they are different, which we do, obviously we do, then we chase winning and put a lot of effort into winning, and that makes the wheel spin round, and the wheel is made up of winning, losing, winning, losing, winning, losing, winning, losing, around and around and around. And the fact that it's a wheel comes out of the fact that they're the same, and the fact that it's spinning is because we think they're different, and we think we're getting somewhere, but we're not. So that's it, a game is a wheel. The only reason it doesn't seem as boring, as tedious as hell to us is because we have a fantasy, and that fantasy is what winning is going to be. What is winning going to be? It's a fantasy because there's no such thing. Well, really, it's just a mark on this. If you can imagine like a circle cut out of cardboard and put two marks, one at the top, one at the bottom, winning and losing, good, bad, up, down, whatever the hell you want to write on it. We imagine that they're really, really different, but those marks are just marks on the same old disc of cardboard. So winning doesn't mean anything. It just means the game. The game doesn't mean anything because it's not real. But in our heads, winning, there's this fantasy we have. it's the greatest thing ever. Every little cell in our body yearns to be the winner, to get to that place. Not because of what it really is, because what we've fantasized it as being. And our fantasy is impossible. We couldn't even say what it is because it doesn't exist. And it could never exist. And the only reason it has such power on us because it's just like a trigger that triggers us to crave for it or to strive for it and put all our energy into striving for it without examining what it is we're striving for, because if we examine it, we see that that fantasy doesn't exist. It's a meaningless fantasy. It's the ultimate bit of meaninglessness. So we don't see that because we're too busy chasing after it. And the chasing after it stops us examining it because all of our energy is going into chasing it. And so that's why this state of mind is called the unconscious state of mind, because we're too busy chasing the positive projection and running away from the negative projection to examine the projection. So that's unconsciousness, which is a perpetual motion machine, which keeps on going on and on and on forever and ever and ever without any getting anywhere. And it seems to be, to us at times, getting somewhere. Some are exciting, and at other times it seems to be going towards something terrible. And the two balance each other out, and the terrible thing that's going to happen to us, losing, is as much of a fantasy projection as winning is. So that's all there is to it, really. Normally we don't consider ourselves to be acting neurotically or living neurotically. And that's because the pain isn't intense enough. The pain is there. The pain of being trapped in the game without seeing the game to be a game. That pain is always there, but we displace it. We displace it in lots of ways. We're displacing pain the whole time, and generally speaking, if there's people weaker than we are with less power in the game, we displace it onto them, which is one of the more unpleasant sides of society or the game. You might think we can be a member of society and be nice to everyone, but we can't. That's not how it works. There's a lot of pain being displaced in society, and the higher you up the pyramid, the more pain you can displace onto others. And when you get to be the very bottom of it, every fecker is displacing their pain onto you, and you've got no one left to displace it onto. So that's you may not instantly relate to that idea, but you would if you were at the bottom of the pyramid. You'd know what I'm talking about. If you're at the top, you won't, because you'll be totally deluded. You don't want to own up to your activities when you're at the top of the power pyramid. That's total delusion city. And what's more, you have the power to create those delusions and impose them on everyone else, and to be in a situation where you never have to question them. So that's pretty good, isn't it? In a way. So that's everything that happens from having this map of self and other, which is a game. And any activity that comes out of that map is the game. The game is inherently incoherent, which is to say, the game is inherently self-contradictory, as James Carr says about finite games. They're self-contradictory. Okay, thanks for watching.